You forget, Starscream. I can transform too.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another cartoon commentary. Joining me today is Mike. Michael, which one do you prefer?
Michael.
Michael. I prefer Mike. That's funny, even though the channel is called Michael Mercy. But from Death Strong Designs, the repros that you've done, repros on my channel. And before we kick the episode off, what are you working on next?
Right now, I'm getting ready to release parts for Skywarp and Starscream.
Cool. And the Jetfire parts are awesome, amazing. It's cool that you're doing them in different colors as well, so people can kind of scratch that Robotech, or sorry, Macross itch.
I'm glad to hear it. I'm glad to hear that.
And personally, even though I don't need them, I know a lot of people would love to see those Wheeljack wings. Those things are always missing. Spoilers for Red Alert seem to be always missing as well. So yeah, that's cool. It's cool that you're doing it.
Red Alert.
It's cool that you're doing those. We're checking out Fire in the Sky. This is an episode that you recommended because you're a big Skyfire, Jetfire fan, and this is his first appearance, which was December the 8th, 1984. It's a special episode to me as well because it didn't really ever go to Canada, but this is as close as it gets, I think, because, you know, Yo Snow. So I always like this episode too, and of all the Transformers episodes, some of them do have kind of a melancholiness about them. A heck of a lot more than most 80s cartoons, more serious, didn't really talk down to kids. Megatron's Master Plan is a big one about like big ideas and not just happy endings to the episode, but like Optimus Prime basically having his reputation destroyed and taking it in stride with grace and just taking the high road.
Oh yeah.
But this particular episode, other than the movie, which the movie had a lot of downer moments to it, but it ended on an upbeat note. This episode really ends on a downer, basically a death. I mean, he comes back the next episode, right? But if you never watched another episode after this, the dude died. So this is a children's cartoon for a children's toy line in the 80s that ends with this big dude being introduced and killed off in the same episode and having a funeral. So not just dead, but a vigil, a funeral at the end. So it's pretty heavy.
Yeah, you don't see that in a lot of kids shows. This episode always left an impact on me because of that.
And it is an impactful death at the end, or seeming death, because he's just such a great character in such a short period of time. Very layered, great character, not just, me robot, shoot bad robots. So that's what we're getting into right now. Fire in the Sky is on the Hasbro Pulse YouTube channel. So I'll have a link for it down there in the video description. And we're queued up at the very beginning of the episode. I'm going to give you a countdown. 3, 2, 1, play. When I say play, your finger is pressing that play button on YouTube. 3, 2, 1, play. And the original Transformers intro. So it always takes me back to Sunday mornings. And the original Transformers cartoon was on Sunday morning. Weird time for a cartoon, but that's when Transformers started in Canada.
I guess they suppose that this is when people were off and kids were home. This is always very nostalgic for me, even though... Oh, sorry to interrupt. I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, go for it.
It was always very nostalgic for me, even though I was born in 97, because my parents had talked about watching the Transformers when they were kids, and it always seemed like a show that I should try to watch too, because I always look up to my parents, right? You sort of kind of become, you grow into them. So I always wanted to learn what the Transformers was, and seeing this intro even now is like, it still feels nostalgic for me.
That's cool to hear, man. I like hearing that you went back in time and discovered things from before your time, because there is a mentality with some people that how good could it be if it was before I was born or before my childhood. And I grew up loving music from the generation before me. And I remember hearing from quite a few old timers, you can't like my music. It's my music. young whippersnapper. You like that aha and wham crap. I'm like, no, man, I love AC/DC and Zeppelin and Skinner. Like, I don't care if it's before my time. Doors. The big avalanche ball.
It's classic snowball effect.
They have done so many, both official as well as third party, so many of every little moment of Transformers. It's gotten to the point of Star Wars where every guy who was in Star Wars for half a second got a figure. I'm surprised we haven't seen a third party snowball with these Transformers you can stick
Oh
into.
my goodness, you're right. Or a Spike in this in his coat, his winter coat Spike.
Winter gear Spike. This is the point where Peter Cullen had already started to morph, even though it's one of the very early episodes. Peter Cullen in the very early episodes, the first like 3 or 4, sounded totally John Wayne. You know, he's doing his brother, Larry. And by this point, he's starting to become a little more, enunciating a little more clearly. Whereas in the early ones, he really had that John Wayne swagger, which I just loved so much.
I mean, he felt like he really had to try, you know. He has to voice a truck in this cartoon. And the actors admit that, you know, playing robot characters, you do have to work a lot harder to try and get emotion. And I listened to an interview, I think it was on the 20th anniversary DVD set, where they said that there's no such thing as overacting.
Overkill is underrated, my friend. It's a line from Joe Carnahan's A-Team. Especially for this. And it's good that this particular crew approached it as, what is my character? Not just I'm a big gun or I'm a big truck. And maybe Peter Cullen, he shared that story many times about the audition, went into it thinking I'm a truck, I'm a hero truck. But it was his brother that set him straight and said, be a real hero. Don't be one of these Hollywood heroes. And they, you know, some of them are those just kind of caricature comic strip characters like Rumble. Rumble's bad and Thundercracker's bad, but some of them.
This scene always makes me laugh.
The Avalanche. Some of
It's
them have
Decepticons
many layers to them.
being fools, but they're characters in their own right, even though they're the bad guys.
Mm-hmm. And here's the treacherous Starscream.
This is something Transformers and G.I. Joe both did very well, was giving characters to not only the villains, but the heroes in both sides.
Yeah, Cobra definitely had a lot of interesting, maybe even more interesting characters than the Joes. But this is such a great story here because Starscream is usually just the petulant, treacherous, irritating brat that is always trying to usurp Megatron and getting blasted by him. And he's actually more conflicted in this episode, I think, than any other episode. That's his old buddy. And you see shades of the old, millions of years ago Starscream before he was just a complete piece of crap. You know, this episode makes me think maybe Starscream maybe he wasn't a totally good guy, but he had a shred of decency about him. You know, the scientist's heart or spark in him.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder. And this episode raises a lot of questions. It was probably one of the first times I considered Starscream being somewhat different, and him potentially even having a friend. Because I don't know, Starscream I wouldn't call him buddies with his Decepticons. No. He seems to kind of bicker and argue with just about anyone.
I think he's better than them.
Yeah. So seeing him even knowing another robot like this, even the flashback was really cool. I appreciate them giving some depth to Starscream in this episode.
And it's really Starscream who's pushing for this guy to be revived here. It's not Megatron going, "Oh, a possible weapon," but he wants.
That's a good Frank Welker impression.
All you got to do is sound very, very old and very, very tired. That's the secret. Can you imagine how many millions of years of garbage he's had to put up with from Starscream?
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
Starscream right here cares. This is like the only time in the whole cartoon ever that he cares about something other than himself. And it's not for the purpose of gaining power. Like, I don't really think of it here as he's trying to revive Skyfire to help him take over the Decepticons. No, this is his friend that for some reason he cares for. He has an attachment for, and he feels bad that he lost him all those years ago. Because he does say, right? He goes back and looks for him, but he couldn't find him.
Yeah, that's something you don't see from Starscream.
That is quite out of character. Well, I guess, if you're around a couple million years, you change, you evolve. Some people even after a decade or so. Yeah. That part right there, he sounds so sad. Like I looked for him, I couldn't find him. He's usually screeching and...
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Now,
is this one of Greg Berger's first roles in the Transformers?
Wasn't he Grimlock as well?
Yeah. Did the Dinobot episode come before this?
Oh, I'm not sure. No. Yes, it did. I'm just looking at the episode list, and War of the Dinobots was before that. Ultimate Doom was before this. SOS Dinobots. So yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Now the Decepticons should have known right from the start this guy wasn't going to go along with this plan because blue eyes, right? That's the color coding.
You're right.
Blue eyes, good guy. Red eyes, bad guy.
I think Megatron thinks he can manipulate anyone.
There are exceptions, though. I know the comic doesn't care about that rule at all, but for me, even in the comic, in the cartoon, in the toy, doesn't matter to me. Fort Max should have red eyes in whatever incarnation he is, just because he's so gigantic. I've tried like big glossy chrome blue eyes on Fort Max. It doesn't work. Like the red on a giant is just more fitting. Yeah, Skyfire's not feeling this. He's smelling a rat already. And Berger changes the performance pretty quickly as Skyfire. I think even by the next episode. In this one, he's very calm, quiet, soothing. I think Heavy Metal War comes after this, and then Fire on the Mountain, which is where they bring him back, right? So he sits one episode out, I believe.
I wonder if his pitch was you need to play a scientist.
Yeah. Exactly. For the first one. And then when they bring it back, now you're a warrior. So kick it up a little bit. And they totally...
He literally just said that.
Yeah. And he's unrecognizable from the toy. I'm sure a lot of Transformers know the whole story about that. The Jetfire, Robotech, Macross, Harmony Gold issues. He wasn't allowed to look anything like the toy. But they wanted something in the show because, kids knew, right? Okay, I know who that's supposed to be. Even though he's not allowed to look exactly like him. It's close enough. And in doing so, they've just created a completely different character as well. Like that masterpiece Jetfire they just did is outstanding.
Do you have that?
Not yet, no.
I'm still waiting on mine.
But the redesign, it's nothing to turn your nose up at. The Macross Valkyrie is beautiful, but the Skyfire design, both in robot and jet motor, really nice as well for something that was just, the animators came up with it as a stand-in.
And they've had to take a lot of liberties with these robot designs, especially from the Diaclone toys of Ironhide and was Ratchet. They didn't have their heads and bodies, or they were very loosely inspired by the toys. But you can see a lot of creativity just in the robot designs in this show and what they had to work with. I'm very impressed.
They took a different direction from GoBots, which tried to stay as close to the toys as possible. So watching old GoBots is interesting because everything is so toy accurate. Whereas this one, they wanted it more to look functional, more like it would look in real life. Which is funny because you fast forward all these decades later, and these designs, which were meant to just work in animation, are now what the toy looks like. Looks like it just jumped off the screen.
Oh yeah, for sure. I am very happy that we're finally going back to this and revisiting it and giving us nice and very accurate representations of the show as well.
Mhm.
This was my first time, experiencing Transformers outside of the films, the live action films, and the transition wasn't very jarring. Actually, I thought. I mean, I still appreciate the movies and even I still appreciate this show. I think I value both of these things equally.
I liked the first movie. I thought it captured the spirit of the show. It was fun. Sometimes when things make the jump from cartoon or comic to film to the big screen movie, they feel the need to make it dark and serious and heavy stakes. You can put people in black leather outfits, but don't lose the spirit. Spirit is everything. Spirit is the most important thing with a toy, a comic, a show, a movie with a human being. There's nothing more important to a human being than their spirit, an intangible spirit. And you see too many things lose the spirit. Like it becomes mean-spirited when before it was light-hearted and light-spirited, optimistic. This show is optimistic for as somber as it can get, and it's one of the more, if not the most somber cartoon of the 80s. It's still optimistic. The hero is named Optimus Prime. That just solidifies it right there. They named him Optimus. And good always prevails over evil. And then the movies just give me your face, and not to hearken on the same thing that everyone always brings up, but it just seemed more pessimistic and snide and snarky. Uh-oh. Ironhide's got too much lead in his caboose. Blame it on Ironhide.
He didn't deny it.
Well, he's a big van. Those vans, they're a lot bigger than those nice minivans are today. I remember those old vans from the 80s. I believe it. I believe an animation error is coming here. He loses his trailer.
Yeah. I noticed. Yeah. Yep, there he is.
It's gone.
He couldn't do that turn with that trailer. That's why.
Luckily, Subspace has explained that. It's gone in hiding for now. Casey Kasem as Cliff Jumper. Number 1 on the bottom 40. All the voices are so great. Galvazan as Bumblebee. He's got that little bit of is it a New York accent? A little attitude. And Ironhide is one of my all-time favorites. Oh yeah. You old cowboy.
I especially love that episode where he was trying to lead the Autobots when they were questioning Optimus Prime's identity.
Yeah, the double.
Yep.
That was so cool. Yeah, Starscream is just off. He is totally different in this episode. He wants to get back home. He's homesick, like his Skyfire stirring up an old personality, a dormant personality in him. Oh no, here comes the
there he is again.
Yeah. Evil.
He'll turn
oh
on
yeah. Oh yes, evil.
Consistent.
It's funny how the Decepticons, of all of them, I think the most effective Decepticons were the tapes. More than the others, I think they usually succeeded in whatever task they were given.
You know what? You're right.
Ravage seemed to always...
Yeah,
Ravage always... Look at him, going to work here, and Laserbeak would get the info or kidnap someone. They were pesky little buggers. Like the toy accurate transformations there on Bumblebee and Cliffjumper.
I just noticed that myself. Yeah.
Sometimes they get creative, right? They do a curtsy and a spin, and their arms twist around through their abdomen. Like what? Like Hot Rod in the movie. What is that? That's not at all what the toy does.
And some of your toys actually try and do that too, and it somehow it works.
Oh, Lord, the third parties do that now, and it's like, please don't. As much as I like some of those new third parties and Masterpiece Transformers, I don't like sitting there for an hour trying to transform, especially with bigger fingers than I had when I was a teenager.
Oh yeah.
He's
I
standing
still
up
have
for
a
what's right here.
Trailbreaker that I got, and I haven't transformed him yet.
Oh man,
Oh,
you scumbag. Well, so much for so much for that old sentiments. He's just a piece of garbage.
man.
But it was interesting while it lasted, the conflict of Starscream. But he's like Vader, he's too far into the dark side. But we haven't seen the great showdown between the two of them yet. The really awesome thing about this story is trying to recruit and sway Skyfire into a way of thinking that he's not used to and not into, basically against his own oath. And he betrays him here. And then at the very end, the really cool part is once he's repaired, we get to see the showdown where Skyfire says enough. And now it's like that scene. I don't know if you've seen Denzel Washington's Equalizer, but
I've seen a little bit of it. Yeah.
Great movie. He does a scene with a really nasty killer. And Denzel says, I made a promise that I was going to stop doing what I was doing, which is he's a killer, right? He's a government agent killer. Made a promise I was going to stop doing what I was doing, but for you, I'll make an exception. So that's a great scene, and that it reminds me of this reminds me of the Equalizer in that Skyfire is not a fighter, but for Starscream, he'll make an exception. Like I'll kick your butt. That's great dialogue here too on the Autobot side. They're not just goody two shoes. We must save him because he's a living creature. No, Cliffjumper's like, leave him.
Cliffjumper's always been so distrusting.
Cliffjumper's like low light. He's like one hair away from being a Decepticon himself.
Yeah.
The Energon cube on the head. You disgust me.
Starscream's eyes got bigger there.
I never get tired of the Megatron and Starscream interplay and the banter.
I think that's something that is. I'm glad that that's something that's always been preserved in the many iterations of the Transformers. When I show Transformers to my friends today, they always love the Starscream and Megatron's relationship.
Yeah. And I love that it concluded in the movie where Galvatron finally said, enough. I'm going to literally dustify you. And even then it didn't end. The bugger came back as a ghost and haunted Galvatron. Just fitting. I'll come back and haunt you.
The spirit never dies.
Yeah. Oh, I love this transformation here, how he does the shake before he detaches and the slow transform. This is why Prime is Prime. Episodes like this. He was just the ultimate robot back then. Fighting with the crystal swords. So cool. A little bit of a sword duel.
Always love that move from Megatron right there.
It
reminds me that these guys are robots and that they can do things that most humans can't.
I guess Megatron isn't up to date on how Starscream betrayed Skyfire. Oh, there's the big iconic moment. So many people have the new masterpiece holding the Autobot badge. It doesn't happen often, but I love seeing Megatron manhandled like that. I think only Omega did it as well. Maybe Grimlock too. Now this
Bruticus as well. Yeah.
Love this moment. You forget I can transform too.
Was this our first time seeing him transform? I think.
Well, the flashback showed him in jet mode.
Oh, that's right.
When they're traveling. But yeah, first time transforming, I believe. This is a great showdown here. Boom.
I love this so much. I quoted it in one of my ads. It's just, I always remember this fight. So
they're cheering. They think he's won, but Starscream's a pretty fast jet himself. And the self-sacrificing final act to save everybody. So yeah, I know in hindsight, looking back on this, what's the big deal? Why didn't they just dig him out? Because they literally did 2 episodes later. But that wasn't the point of, the story.
They probably felt like they needed to maybe build themselves some safety net where they could maybe get rid of Skyfire in case it became a sort of a legal problem.
Oh, you know what? That's actually probably exactly what happened there. It was all ambiguous at the time, and because I was thinking, like, did they not think they would need him again? But the whole legal issue with the character, that's probably exactly what happened there. We got him in there. We got him in 1 episode. Let's see if we can, squeak that out without any issues. And
he was the main Autobots transportation. I think that's all they used him for after that. He made very few appearances outside of needing to fly the Autobots to Cybertron. And then once Omega Supreme was introduced, Skyfire was all but useless.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. Yeah, in season 2, he did. I don't think you ever see him in season 2, do you? Or at least not in the later episodes where Omega shows up and tracks and like that 85 line of toys when they start showing up. I think that's all she wrote for Skyfire, which is such a shame. Like not even a movie appearance.
He wasn't in Transformers the movie either. Yeah,
that's unfortunate, but great episode.
I agree. I always felt sympathetic for Skyfire, in that episode.
You know what? Because
he's like a newborn child, and who doesn't know, like, he's grown up into this world after the war, and he doesn't know what's happened, why there's a war, why there's conflict, who these people are, and he has to sort of discover this and realize that his friend is wrong, this person that he used to know.
It's a good message too, I think, that no, I'm a scientist. I'm not supposed to be hurting people, killing people. There's an oath you take as a scientist to study and learn. He says it right in the episode, but it's also very interesting character study, even though it's a cartoon. The Sunbow crew always went above and beyond where they were asked to go and where they needed to go compared to other cartoons, and they just literally just pushed the toy. It was a toy commercial show. But Sunbow, it's like, what if we had him be a scientist and he's pushed to do these things, and then by his own accord, when he's on the side of the good guys, he says, okay, I do have to fight. That's actually a reason why I'm such a big fan, not only of Prime, but Fortress Maximus, because Fort Max really, that's a part of his character. His quote on the back of the box is prepare for war, but strive for peace. A lot of people who are fighting forget what the point of fighting is for. It's not for fighting. It's not for more fighting. It's what you're fighting for. And yeah, some people say fighting for peace is like, something else. If people know the saying I'm talking about, it kind of goes in circles and doesn't make much sense. But as far as the cartoon goes, it's interesting to see him put his foot down, pick his rifle up and go, yeah, you know what? I am going to fight, but not for you. I'm going to fight against you, because he's just listening to his heart, his intuition. It's like, what you guys are doing it took him a while. And for a scientist, you'd think he'd see it a lot sooner. But eventually he figured it out that these guys are dag nasty evil, and he's going to fight them.
Yeah. And then I don't remember that many episodes of the Transformers where a character makes this switch like that, where he must decide, do I want to be a Decepticon or do I want to be an Autobot?
That was a rare thing just in cartoons in general back in the 80s. Storm Shadow, that never happened on the cartoon, but famously in the comics, he switched sides from Cobra to Joe. I'm thinking like there's Counterpunch, right? Punch, Counterpunch, but that's his gimmick. He changes allegiances as part of his gimmick, even though he's actually technically truly an Autobot disguised as a Decepticon. But that's another cool thing about Skyfire, is that he switched sides. He saw the light. Mercer in G.I. Joe is another one, right? Even though we never saw him as a Viper, he always had this cool aura about him. Like, I've been to the other side and I've I've come back out of the darkness into the light. People like a redemption story.
Yeah, absolutely.
So to wrap up here, what's your favorite part of this episode?
I really like the part where Skywarp and Rumble are in the tunnel, and Skywarp is like taunting him. He's like, "Oh, is the big bad ice too tough for you?" Like it's little things like that just make me happy. Because I don't know, but obviously the broad strokes of the episode are obviously very memorable. I can't pick a single moment without feeling like I'm leaving something out. This Skyfire is always going to be one of my favorite Autobots in the whole series, even outside. Even though he was seldom used for anything other than carrying them places, I always think back to this episode and his conflict that he had, and that's probably the most memorable part of the episode. Outside of the little Decepticon shenanigans, I mean, this episode alone has probably the most memorable Decepticon moments. For me, oddly enough, when Megatron throws a cube at Starscream and
you disgust me. It's not enough that he just threw it at him, but he's got to get that little jibe in there as well.
Yeah. So many creative decisions were made in this episode on both sides.
And for such a somber, heavy episode, you do need those moments of comedy in there, because otherwise it's just a complete downer. It's nice to go on that little bit of a roller coaster. I got an idea for you. You don't have to entertain it, think about it at all, but a little piece of unfinished business. What do you think about an accessory set, armor set for G1 Jetfire that looks like Skyfire jet armor thruster, to try to make a G1 Jetfire look more like the cartoon Skyfire? Might be heresy to some Robotech fans, but because his thrusters are closer together or side by side against each other in the cartoon. Something.
That's an interesting thought. I get a lot of requests for all kinds of things. I've never actually gotten a request for that.
I don't know what it would do to the jet in jet mode, but it's something to think about, right? Because I've seen a lot of cool little upgrades that they've brought out for G1 Transformers to make them look a little more toon accurate. There was a great set from Gear for Toys to finally give Ironhide and Ratchet heads, and I
can't find that set anymore.
Yeah, it's gone. But and then there was another set of just the heads to plug the heads on, so at least that's something. But for people who have a Jetfire but missing all the armor, they could get the repros from you in the original style, but something a little more toon accurate for the people who aren't diehard Robotech fans that just want their Skyfire, not Jetfire.
I think to do it justice, Michael or Mike, I think to do it justice, I might have to.
You know what?
Probably redesign the entire toy.
Scratch that. You can call me Turd Ferguson. Yeah, it would probably. I would imagine it'd be humongous because the thruster would just be this giant thing on his back. But something to think about. Anyway, like I said, you don't have to entertain it or even do it, but something to play around in your computer, see if it's a possibility. But that just popped into my mind there. A G1 Jetfire to look more G1 Skyfire accurate.
Well, thanks for the idea. I really appreciate that. One of these days, I'm going to fall back on all these ideas that I get. These things that I don't always say yes to all of them. Namely because I have to pick something in my line of work because if I'm trying to do, unfortunately, I don't have the time to do everything. I wish I did. I wish there were more hours in the day that I could model and make parts for everything. But I'm going at the pace that I am. I think I've decided mainly to stick to just making replacement parts for G1 toys, overdoing things like upgrades and things that need improving. Unless the part, like the arm guards, for example, Jetfire's arm guards were inherently flawed. Just I think from the basic design of them, they broke way too easily. Even on mine that I had, I was being so careful with them, I ended up actually breaking one, and man, did I that's a bad feeling when you break a 30-year-old toy.
Yeah.
And so I'll redesign small things that obviously need the improvement. But for the most part, I try and just stay as faithful as I can to the source material. But I think one day I'm gonna open up probably a customs tab, and for projects like the one that you recommended, where I pretty much redesign something and kind of put it in its own category. I think that might be fun to do one day.
Yeah, Charlie does that. He does Ghostbusters, real Ghostbusters replacement parts, Charlie's Custom Toy Shop. And he doesn't just do straight up reissues of the original parts. He'll redesign things, tweak things, improve upon them. And it's interesting to see him come up with things that never were but should have been. So, yeah, I know he has a lot of fun with that stuff. So possibly down the road and possibly not. It's also important to say no and, accept no. And also not just in the toy collecting world, but in everywhere, family always comes first. So time is precious and family is the priority, or should be.
Here. It's
all right. That's it for us. Thanks for joining me on this cartoon commentary.
Thank you so much.
And we'll all catch you in the next one. All right. Till all our fun.